Welcome everyone to another 30-minute Tools for Change webinar here with Nexus for Change. We are looking today at some simple virtual collaboration tools and opportunities that it feels have been very pertinent with the number of universities and schools that are closing and the social distancing that has been suggested around the world as one of the ways that we ought to make sure that we contribute to this not becoming a larger issue than it is becoming already. And at Nexus, we have worked with virtual engagements for about the last 12, 15 or so years. And so we're hoping to share some of the learnings and insights with you here today. There are three basic rules that I tend to share with especially larger gatherings when we have them in the virtual environment. One is that I dislike, in my personal experience as a participant, to be muted and not have an opportunity to speak. So I tend to give participants, unless it is, if we're talking a group of 90, it's sort of a different story, especially if you're trying to record a large session like that. But for the most part, I encourage participants to be responsible for their own muting. I encourage you all to drink lots of water. I've learned that while it can prevent coronavirus, actually washing some of that stuff down into where your stomach acid can address it can at least be helpful. And I encourage you all, now if your video is not currently shared, this is not a dig at you, but both as a presenter as well as a fellow participant, I think it's meaningful if we're on a video connection that we leverage that tool. So I'm able to see your faces, I'm able to see your body language at least above your shoulders in terms of whether you're confused by what I'm saying, or you agree with what I'm saying, or you're flustered by what I'm saying. That's really meaningful for me as a presenter. And it's one of the key differences, I think, in our face-to-face interactions versus the virtual environment, that it can be very challenging to be able to read the room or have an understanding as to whether or not what I'm saying connects with you all. One of the things that I encourage you to be planful about in terms of virtual engagements is to identify what roles you need and what roles you need to manage as part of the engagement. I am at the moment sort of relying on Carol, who is here and works with us at Nexus. Hi, Carol, thank you so much, to monitor the chat a little bit and see if there's anything pertinent that I might have to be aware of, so I don't have to constantly scan back and forth between my various screens. If you are able, and there is a clear structure for an engagement that has somebody who's the lead and has the sort of decision-making responsibility for that gathering, I encourage you to not have that same person also be the facilitator of the meeting. It's super helpful, especially in this virtual environment, to not have to play both roles, although you sometimes can. Finally, right now we're recording, so I don't necessarily need somebody who takes real-time notes. But certainly if you are in an environment where maybe you are stringing multiple virtual engagements in a larger session context and you want quick turnaround for sharing of inputs and data, to have somebody assigned that's a note taker that then can upload that, or maybe do it real time on a Google Doc, for example, in a cloud-based storage, and then that can be shared with the group rather than, yes, we have an audio and video recording, but somebody has to review it, maybe has to edit it, maybe has to upload it. So those are some of the key roles, so you don't have to split yourself in half. Be sure that as much as you can, you provide a general layout and some basic background in terms of an agenda and the technology base. For these quick 30-minute sessions, the initial screen that most of you should have come into is intended for that. It gives you some basic technology information. It gives you a basic breakdown of what to expect, to both lower sort of the threshold of potential anxiety, maybe with folks that don't have great context with the technology, as well as give you just some general understanding on the context of what to expect for that engagement. One of the things that I find incredibly valuable that I was initially, let's say, curious about, that I had some questions about, was whether or not and how to leverage mindfulness as a tool to engage people to begin a virtual session. If you are a client of Nexus for Change and you engage with us in virtual context, we sort of make that at least a strong recommendation to make part of your practice, to begin with what in our neurology is considered a pattern interrupt or pattern reset. You might have a gathering where there is currently, I think 16 or so of us here. You might have somebody in an office setting that's noisy. You might have somebody else at home with their kids next door. You might have somebody else on a phone trying to follow the session in an airport lounge, to sort of allow yourself to take a breath literally, and to begin the session is meaningful. So I want to try this technique with you that I found meaningful. It's called 16-second breath, or some people call it box breathing. I have learned it from somebody who's actually here, Rick Fenwick. Thank you so much for sharing that. The idea is that we breathe in together to a count of 4. I'll be counting. You then hold your breath to my count of 4. You then breathe out to a count of 4, and again, hold your breath to a count of 4. And we'll do that sort of as a group. You're welcome to close your eyes and just listen to my voice as you do that. If you think that this Eastern stuff is a bunch of humbug, I invite you to think of it in terms of a prayerful moment. That was sort of my hang up. I'm a Baptist minister's kid, and initially it was like, should I do this meditation thing? So I just invite you to allow this to happen. And again, I'm going to close my eyes and guide us through this, and we'll start with a big breath, just sort of out, and then breathe in together to the count of 4. Breathing in. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 3, 4. Breathe out. 3, 4. And again, hold your breath. 3, 4. And welcome back. So I encourage you to if this is not something that you commonly do, to investigate, to find out if that's meaningful for your engagements. I have found it very meaningful as even just a moment to take a pause and take a breath in my day. For virtual meetings, one thing that's the most difficult to manage are sort of round robin engagements. They can be really meaningful and sometimes very important, especially if this maybe is a new group that you're looking to facilitate in a virtual realm. You do need to make sure that you offer some space for people to get to know each other, to connect a name with the faces that they see on screen. The challenge is, if you have an hour meeting and you spend 45 minutes to go around the room and everybody introduce themselves, then even though you maybe now know each other better, it's going to potentially feel like you didn't accomplish anything. So one of the ways to limit that and facilitate that is the 3 options that are listed here on your screen, sort of an order of effectiveness. Hey, 3-word check-in. How are you coming to this session? And it sort of tickles our brain a little bit like, oh, I'm only supposed to use 3 words. Many of us end up using 5 or 7 words, but it gives sort of a limitation. Similarly, for sentences, you know, a 4-sentence check-in might be more appropriate for a group that doesn't routinely meet. Time limits can be helpful, but those are the most difficult to sort of actually then facilitate and convene, short of starting some like awards show music when somebody has hit the 2-hour mark, which can be fun. I've been in one engagement where that worked, but that takes a little bit more pre-planning, and depending on who you're engaging with can come off badly that you're cutting somebody off. But that's something to be mindful of. The main thing that I want to sort of share with you today, and that I think is the key thing as to why these virtual meetings increasingly can be meaningful and important with larger groups, is that we can leverage breakout rooms. Zoom, the platform that we're on, does a really good job in allowing you to use those. There are other platforms that do a good job. I'm not getting paid by Zoom to push their virtual breakout rooms, but that's the one I'm most familiar with that we use more often, and I certainly encourage you to investigate if there are other tools. Small side note, if you're in a situation with maybe a client or university and they have an established tool, I encourage you to check that out and see what those opportunities are. I expect that with the worldwide scare of the coronavirus, tools like this will become much more broad in use, and there will be more people offering those tools. John and I were sort of having a little back and forth before the session started that those organizations are probably doing very well currently. So I encourage you to leverage those, and we'll go through some examples here this morning as how you can leverage, or this afternoon for some of you, with how we can leverage these tools. One of my favorite ways of using breakout sessions in the virtual environment is the liberating structure called 1, 2, 4, all, because it is so simple to remember and the threshold of facilitating it is very low. If you can remember the name 1, 2, 4, all, you basically know what you need to know to be a facilitator of that format. It starts with 1 minute by yourself, everybody on a piece of paper or however they see fit, taking notes on an important challenge or important question. I typically in the virtual environment would do that. If we were to engage in this, I would say, all right, clock starts now. And we would all stay in this big gathered room, probably muted for the most part, and we would take a minute to take some notes. I would then send you into pairs in breakout rooms, and I, as the facilitator, would not participate, but I would monitor the clock and make sure that people don't have issues with the technology, and would send you into breakout rooms. You get to spend 2 minutes there. At the 1 minute mark, you get a message, hey, this room will close in 60 seconds. So that gives you that indicator that your 2 minutes are about up. And in that pairing, you would generate ideas from the initial notes and thoughts that you put down on paper. It would then switch to a new set of breakout rooms that would be a new set, different people, depending on who's showing up for your session, so that you have groups of 4, and then you can report out into the larger group, and we would sort of track, hey, this was the challenging question that we talked about in our groups. What were some of the standout considerations? And typically what happens is once you get to maybe the 10th, or maybe at maximum, in my experience, the second, second half dozen, that was out. At about 10 to 12 groups, basically the ideas that have been shared, somebody will say, yes, that's similar to ours, and you get a decent report out. So I encourage you to look at Liberating Structures. I will drop a link into the chat box for you to dig a little bit deeper if you're unfamiliar or want more information. Also encourage you to go to our blog. There's a lot of good resources there that leverage some of these tools in different ways. The one that I want to utilize with you here this morning is called Impromptu Networking. Takes a total of 6 to 7 minutes. I will put you into pairs in our breakout rooms, and we're going to sort of combine 2 tools. One is Impromptu Networking from Liberating Structures. Again, I'll drop a link for you in the chat in a minute. And Mad, Sad, Glad, that some of you probably are familiar with. We'll do 3 rounds of impromptu networking. You'll be in pairs. It'll be a total of 2 minutes, 1 minute each. And you'll answer, what am I mad about? What am I sad about? What am I glad about in regards to a certain issue that we might want to address? It'll be 2 minutes, 1 minute each. You'll come back to the large group. I'll send you in a new set of breakout rooms. We'll do that 3 times. And then we'll share the outcomes of our conversation. So the way that that will look is you'll get a little pop-up on your screen that says the host invited you to the breakout room number such and such, and you'll be paired with somebody to answer what makes you mad, sad, and glad about working virtually. And so for the first round, you'll talk about what you're mad about. The second round, again, 1 minute each, you'll talk about what is sad to you about that. And the third one is, what are you glad about working virtually? And so I'm going to give us about 10, 15 seconds. Anybody have questions in terms of the process or technology? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask that real quick. Otherwise, I will at this point put you in breakout groups of 2 each. Okay, I don't see any hands going up or anything in the chat that looks like protest. So there might be one group that is a group of 3. So you'll have to keep yourself, rather than leaving one of you alone, you'll have to keep yourself to more 45 seconds each. But I'll try to give us a little bit of extra time. So here we go.
I didn't know Zoom had this. This is great.
Oh, yeah.
I do, but it's, our center, I don't think, has the sophisticated version. Are you asking for report outs, Theo, or are you waiting for the next
No,
group?
I'm going to wait for everyone to come back. They have about 7 more seconds, and then I'm going to
Okay.
send you into the second round to talk about the SADs around virtual work.
Okay.
Then we'll do a report out after the complete thing.
Right.
So welcome back, everyone. Actually, one question from the returnees just now was, do you want us to report out right now? So you certainly can use the tool that way, that you do 1 round, then you do a report out, then you do the next round. In the interest of time this morning, the way that we'll leverage is we'll do all 3 rounds of the mad, sad, and glad, and then we'll do a report out after that, sort of the high-level learnings or insights or things you found curious and interesting. So I'll send you into another set, and I don't know, are you able to see the breakout rooms being managed on my share screen, or is that something? Zoom is really good that it keeps a lot of the facilitative pieces off the screen that you see, but I can see them, and sometimes I'm not sure which is which. So I actually am looking at a way to recreate the new breakout rooms, and I will do that here right now. And that should dump you into another set of pairs for, again, 1 minute each. Yes, Kim?
Teo, we did all three of them. I guess we were
Oh.
overachievers, but it would be really helpful. And I don't know if other people know this. I don't know how to create the breakout rooms to go over that.
Okay, I can do that here in a moment. That'll be a little tricky because it's not something that Zoom lets me screen share, because they're saying you're the facilitator of the session. Your participants don't need to see it, but I'll talk us through that here in a moment.
Okay.
You'll be with a different group of people, so go ahead and if that happened, share again. So here we go. All right, welcome back, everybody. John, you were trying to say something to me before I cut you off and rudely sent you to a breakout room. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. First of all, I'm a overlap speaker, so I don't believe in interruption and cut off.
Fair enough.
So that's not an issue. The other question, I was just going to say, take a screenshot, and then you could probably be able to share your chat.
I'm actually thinking that's something I'll include in next week's sessions, a little bit more lengthy. I think we're going to focus on virtual tours here with the timeliness of this for a couple of these webinars for the next couple of weeks. So I will share that. A quick note on that though, Zoom offers really good tutorials on how to utilize all these. And in a way, they're doing a really smart job and saying, no, we want you to use our teaching. They offer webinars, they offer ways that they're sharing it, rather some Nexus guy showing up and telling you how to do it. So feel free to check those out. One thing that I maybe didn't mention as well, you did it really well the second time around. When you get that message, the rooms will close. You have 1 minute. So in terms of this this particular engagement of the impromptu networking, where it's 1 minute each, it would be one person. If it's in a pair, one person would get to speak until you get that notice that the room will close, and then you get the notice the other person gets to speak for the second minute. So one more round, I'll send you off. Kim had asked about how to create the breakout rooms. If you are the organizer of a session, in the menu that allows you to mute yourself, to engage with participants, to record and so forth, there is an option called breakout rooms. And if you click on that, it enables you to utilize those options. It has to be enabled and is only available to certain plans. So if you have a free plan, there are some limitations, and or you have to enable it in your settings first before it's available in session for you to utilize. But that's maybe something that, thank you for that hint, Kim, that we'll dig into a little bit deeper in a follow-up session. So I'm going to recreate the rooms one more time and then invite you all for the last round that is supposed to focus on Matt said glad. So what are you glad about in terms of virtual collaboration and work? Okay, welcome back. I will put into the chat for you a link to both the Impromptu Networking on Deliberating Structures website, as well as a link to our blog here from Nexus. We had a session, I think in the middle of last year, end of last year, November. There's both a webinar recording of that 30-minute session that was specifically on virtual breakout rooms. One of the sessions in the chat was about what other providers offer this. At the time last November when I looked at that specifically, I'm aware of KikoChat, Zoom, Blackboard, WebEx, Adobe Connect, and GoToMeeting that have some format of breakout rooms. I tend to go with whatever a client that I'm engaged with uses and try to leverage that tool. But some of them are clunky and they ask, well, what do you guys use? And then we ended up typically with Zoom. Again, this is not supposed to be a Zoom commercial, but I've had good experience with them. So I'll share that with you in the chat. And would be intrigued as to what some of the highlights were for you in terms of what are you mad, sad, glad about, or what else might have bubbled up. Feel free to either type in the chat or unmute yourself and share. Go ahead, Wade. Saw your hand first.
I just shared with Mary Lou that while I'm sad about the loss of face-to-face engagement, being somebody who's passionate about designing meetings, I think it's an opportunity to help my clients, my colleagues be much more intentional and rigorous about how they design and facilitate their meetings. Because I think even in-person meetings are flabby and poorly done. And doing it virtually is like tenfold, if not more, difficult. And this is gonna, I think, creates a constraint that I hope we can help people rise to.
Yes, I think the idea of enabling constraint, it's going to be part of my dissertation. So that resonates with me very much. Thank you, Wade. Anybody else?
One of the things that we talked about was, I think it wasn't so much mad, but kind of frustrated, was missing the physicality of being in person. And glad that there are options. It's not something that you have to go out and figure it out. And people have already done it. It's already there. We just have to make a choice. That's a wonderful place to be, right?
Yes, I think when we're able to choose something, as always, what resonated with me when you just shared, Bernadette, is that I've been very blessed to meet a lot of people that collaborative work is all they are about. And I have yet to meet somebody that'll say that this is better than in person. Every last one of them will say the preference is in person, is to be in one another's energy, in another space.
Yes.
But we're grateful, I am grateful that these virtual tools have come to a place where I think some of our energy and presence translates. And I could go into a long rant on that, but I'm looking at Ellen, and I have know Ellen a little bit, and there is something that even having her small face on the screen does something for my interaction and her presence, even though she hasn't spoken just yet. I don't know if she's going to say something here in a minute, but looks like, Rick, you wanted to share something?
No, I'm good. I just,
okay.
I like the Zoom tool. I will say this. I know we use WebNX, and I don't like it at all. It's lots of problems, but there's fewer issues with Zoom. So.
Can I ask, does
Absolutely.
anybody have experience with having larger groups than just 2 or 3 people and longer time periods, like say doing a breakout for 15 or even 30 minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have a specific question on that, or is it possible? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I want to hear some advice on how to approach those effectively.
Wade, do you have something you want to offer?
Yeah, interestingly enough, that's why I'm so passionate about Zoom. I'm in a professional study group that meets 3 hours from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific, 56 people around the world, Rome, Paris, all of the North America, South America. And you have to keep things moving like Teo has done with us. You have a little bit of talk content and you break people out. Have them chew on it, break them back in. What Teo did, this technique, if you've got round robins in the small group, each person breaks out, you have to break them in and break them out to be the timekeeper so they don't talk over each other's time. It works really well. I'm very passionate about it. But there is a learning curve getting everybody used to it, everybody having their cameras on. It's not a layup, but I've seen it be effective.
Yeah, just to add to what Wade was sharing, to me, two key things. And I've done 180 people over 5 hours, sort of a virtual conference. It absolutely works. Number one is plan it well. Number two is the rules that we shared for this grouping need to apply for the breakout rooms. So if you have a breakout room that needs to, if it's 180 people, your breakout room is going to be 15, 20 maybe to make sense. In that breakout room, you need a leader, a facilitator, a note taker, and sort of those role assignments you need to prepare for a little bit and plan with those individuals. But it's absolutely possible, and it can be great fun. I would encourage those of you that haven't heard of Open Space. We've done Open Space sessions in person and online, where we had 2 people in a physical room and 3 fellow open spacers in a virtual space. And you could leave that room and go to a different breakout room, and you can go walk out of a physical space and join another breakout room, and do that both in the virtual space and the physical space. And that's pretty fascinating and fun. We are at 35 after. I want to honor your time commitment. I'm grateful for you being here. I will track on what was in the chat, and will share with you a follow-up email and create also a blog post that will reflect some of our conversation. Thank you for your rich input and insight, and I hope to see you next week for maybe more on the same or some more detail. Please give me feedback, send me an email, respond to the registration email if you still have it. If there's something specific that you would love us to dig into, this is about those of you that show up and are interested, and we want to cater to that. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw my share screen up here for one more second. Come see us at nexusforchange.com. There is lots of content and links there, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you,
you.
Dale.